So, hi everyone. I am with my good friend. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much first for having me, Russell. What we just said. Like I was speaking with Claire yesterday, and to be able to also to talk to you today as well, I feel it feels like such a gift. I'm Elin, writer of Follow Your Gut here on Substack, and I also run the Petronella Art Studio, where I do hand embroidery, drawing, visual arts, basically. So I'm a all-round artist from Sweden, by the way. But now I live in Belgium. I realized yesterday that I very rarely say that. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I've been following. You were one of the first people that I really connected to when I started doing this consistently. And what I love about your work is everything first and foremost.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
specifically, you go down directions and you go down it with like full gusto. And then, like 3 months later, I will see you be like, hey, so I'm not doing that anymore. And that was great, lovely. And we're going to go this way now. And I do the same thing. But I realized that, like, when we blew up our company, people were like, you can just blow up your company. And you're like, yeah, man, there are no
Yeah.
rules. And so, as somebody else who like seems to have the courage to stop doing things. Like how do we stop doing? Like how do you think about that?
So it's actually a perfect piggyback on the discussion with Claire yesterday. So anybody who didn't listen to that, I invite you to listen to that, because this is actually a continuation on the conversation we had around joyful growth. And well, if you do want to stay in business, not just from a, entrepreneurial business money type of like my terminology, but from a artistic and personal, joyful, sustainable, all of these things, then you do need to kind of become ruthless when it comes to what works for you and what doesn't. And I mean, it would be a lie to say that that it's easy, but I've been doing this for a decade now, and I now have two children. I have moved across the continent in the past 10 years. I've moved probably 8 times to 5 different countries. Like I just had to kind of get really ruthless at letting go of dropping things and not dragging them out too long. As soon as I drag things out too long, I kind of had, it's the premise of the whole follow your gut, the gut led philosophy at the basis, of like, more often than not, we know deep inside what we need to do, but we don't dare to do it. And so the only way that I've been able to actually like stay in business and be a mom and be all of the things that I need to be, again, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily succeeding at it. I've had a bit of a rough patch, but the only way to keep going, because the basis is that I love this work and I want to be able to keep doing it. So I need to just adjust accordingly. And the longer time I take to kind of change and the less decisive I am, so many times, I'm sure you can recognize this, you kind of have to do irreversible decisions, because otherwise you're going to keep tiptoeing back, you're going to keep dancing around, because what if very rarely, and this is something I would say, when we grow up, we are not taught to be decisive, we are not taught to just go for shit, we're not taught necessarily that it's uncomfortable, you know what I mean? It can be very romantic that we're doing our business, we're doing with our passion, but yeah, there comes kind of this need to go down a path, figure it out if that works for you, not based on somebody else's blueprint, but figure out actually how that embodied experience feels like. And then you can evaluate, and then you need to adjust accordingly. Because if you stay stuck and it doesn't work, well, you'll be out of business and you'll drain yourself sooner than you can say hello, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting because we are taught like that work is hard. Like the way to do, like, you do hard things and then work and then like that you get paid or you do something where like that's where work is. But like usually when I talk to entrepreneurs, especially like artists and creative types, it is the frictionless joy stuff that actually is the stuff that like it's joyous because it works. And like what we end up doing is we're like, oh, I can't do this works. This stuff is fun. So like it can't be work, even though it's like working to grow. Like even though it's like work, it's like literally you're watching it work and you're like, I can't keep doing that because like
Because
I
that's
can't
too
achieve
fun.
it. Right. And
Yeah.
so instead you're like, what is hard? And on the other hand, like things are hard because they're not working. Like if they worked, they would be working. But so we get in this loop where we do these hard things that don't work. And I talk to people all the time. They're like, Russell, I don't understand. Like, why is it not working? I'm like, my love, I know the three things that work for you consistently. And you
Yeah.
haven't, when was the last time you did X, Y, or Z? And they're like, a long time ago. And I'm like, well, maybe you should do those things and maybe you'll grow.
That's, I think you literally just laid out the pattern right there. I mean, and I'm sure in your career it's the same. Tracing back the past decade for mine, it's exactly the same pattern. When have I been growing the most? When have I been, uh, um, enjoying the most or whatever? Like whenever I've just been doing the basics, as in just making the art, making the thing, I've been growing the most. I've had the most momentum. As soon as I am kind of on a peak and in that momentum, it's like, oh fuck, now I need to get, organized and structured and do all of the real work stuff. And actually, that just stalls everything more than anything. So, and then you kind of need to get back to okay. Start doing the thing that's fun, and then it kind of loops this loop, and I don't know if I will ever. I don't know. You tell me. Do you arrive at one point when you just realize that you can just keep at the fun level? Because I feel like I keep looping around.
So I consider we just did this big frictionless growth challenge. I just wrote this book about this, but it's all about return on energy investment.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
when there are actions that you do, and there's like 5 of them in the book, that that I'm going to step back for a second. So everything is energy, right? Like money is energy, time is energy, effort is energy, distance is energy. Like energy is all of these things. And what we're trying to do is take one unit of energy, whatever that is, and get the most back for it. And the it's very hard because energy is all of those things at once. And we very rarely get energy back in the way that we give it. So like when we sit down for a meal at a restaurant, somebody is taking their time and we are exchanging money for it. Like we are exchanging our time for work. Like we're doing all of these things. Like sometimes people exchange time for effort. Like something takes you 2 hours and takes me 1 hour and we can exchange like tasks that would take us the least amount of time. And like, so what ends up happening is we have to recognize one, like the effort that we're giving. Like right now, we are doing a very weird thing where we're exchanging equal energy together. Like we're exchanging attention and time with each other, but we have to be like, oh, what is the energy I'm exchanging? And then what is the energy I'm getting back? And I don't care if you make a bad investment. But what I care about is that you're making a bad investment and you do it anyway. Because what I always see is people come to me and they're like, "Oh, this is not working," or they'll be like, "I want to do X," and we are like, "Well, you shouldn't do that because like it's not gonna be a good idea." And they're like, "I'm gonna try it anyway," and then I'm like, "Okay, but." You have to do this knowing when you come back to me and you say it didn't work, I'm going to point to this moment right now where you know that it's not likely to work. It might work. And then I'll be like, amazing, great, you should do it. But if you do something and the expected return on energy is zero or even negative, and then you come back to me after you do that thing and say, I don't understand why this didn't work. What I will say to you is, my love, there was no expectation that it was going to work. You know that there's no expectation that it's going to work. And where I think that a lot of artists not fail, but like our struggle is they're not willing to look at something, say, that probably isn't a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. They fear looking because it will stop them from doing that thing. Where for me, I always want to know, because then I can say, okay, this thing doesn't have a very likely chance to succeed. So now I need to mitigate that with some things that do have that, like, I know are going to work because they're in my toolkit. They're my magic tricks. They're the things that I know are going to work. So I need to make sure I do some of the things that are going to bring money and easy money, because this thing that I'm trying is almost assuredly not going to make money. And if it does, amazing. I just started a new line of business. But we end up putting all of our time, we end up investing 100% of our energy into this thing that has a very little chance of working. And then when it doesn't work, we're like, oh my God, my entire business is going to collapse.
So I think that what you're pointing at here. So first, I appreciate you sharing this because it's very interesting to hear, because I think that we have both similar and different approaches. And I do think so. I am definitely someone who will go after the delusional. 110%. My entire business was built that way and it works. But here comes the kicker, where what you do point out is that we need to be conscious in the distribution of that emotional, creative, physical time, labor, like whatever, all of the different types of labor, because obviously there's going to be various types of labor necessary, especially when your output is dependent on your energy at the time, right? And so the way that I've been able to consistently pay my bills with this for the past 10 years is having some kind of minimum distribution, where, as you say, I do know the basic kind of thing that this is a more like a guaranteed work. If I, that, okay, I'm a bit low, I can do X, Y, Z, I'm going to have a cash infusion and pay that what was needed. But I always make sure, because otherwise my personal joy gets taken out. I always make sure that there is always a bit space to go and try that delusional thing. Because personally, and this is something that I have been working on much more recently, trying to actually, if now that we're talking about energy and we did touch upon balance and these things, figuring out actually how you operate best based on your own energetic design, if you will. And it's something that I did not incorporate in my work at all for the first, I would say, 7 years-ish, 8 years. I think it wasn't until I became a second-time mom that I was like, okay, I got to do things differently. And actually recognize. So one little thing is kind of to make kind of like a mind map. So I'm very visual. As much as I'm writing, that I'm a multi-dimensional artist. I will be called to do poetry sometimes. I'll be called to do painting. I'll be called to do, fiber arts or whatever. Like, I need to have all of these different modes of expression reflecting different seasons. The key for me is to just get it out. My purpose is to translate lived experience. And so that is where I did a visual kind of chart, putting down all of the things that I was doing and putting a little plus and minus sign next by, just to kind of identify what drains energy and what brings energy, and how can I balance between the two. Because sometimes, just because something isn't necessarily financially beneficial at the moment or ever, if it gives you energy, that still feeds into the work that needs to be done to generate money. And so that is why I am not necessarily looking at things from only a logical perspective, in the sense this is what I should do. Because when I do that, I burn myself out. I end up only running a business. And well, my energy will be completely depleted. I might be making my best sales months those months, but I can't sustain it. And so that is where I've had to be really ruthless with regards to what gives energy, what takes energy, and how can I, through various seasons and whatever life demands at those moments, how can I optimize so that I always make sure to have energy generating activities woven in. Was that the right word? Weaved into the day to day, because otherwise you're gonna find me hiding under a blanket, never wanting to come out.
Sure. And I know you don't know, probably don't know about the ecosystem stuff that I do, but that is such an aquatic thing to say.
Tell me more. We have been talking about your ecosystems, but now I have to admit I didn't read about it since probably what now is it 2026? Yeah, so probably a year ago. So you'll need to refresh it.
So I think it's so interesting because the new methodology that I just developed is about scale paths, which is how you grow, and ecosystems, which is how you operate. So like the operation of like how the things that you do over and over and over and over again, and just like how I think about it like an operating system on a computer, like whether you have Mac or Windows or Linux or Ubuntu, you can still make the same piece of art, but the programs that you use, the process that you use, the flow that you use will be slightly different across them. So,
Yeah.
um, I'm also very aquatic. Aquatics are very chaotic energy. They 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 think in different formats, and they what they're trying to do is build the system of the world and like a build different modalities for their thought patterns to emerge. And that also allows them to pull in different people from different modalities really easily. But sometimes it makes them seem chaotic and like they are scattered, because they're like, I'm stopping that. I'm stopping that. I'm not doing this thing. This isn't bringing me a thing. And it's often because they're like, I think this will improve my understanding of my model of the world, and then they go down that path and they're like, oh, nope, didn't do that. That's just going to take me away from this thing, this big universal thing that I'm trying to do. And that universal thing that they're trying to do is held together by all of these different modalities and all of these different things that they love. But if you like pull back and look at them all, you're like, oh, this all makes sense. But when you're at the beginning of your career as an aquatic, like it only makes sense in hindsight. So, like for instance, I've changed my entire site to Hapitalist today, and like in retrospect, the writing a book on capitalism, writing a book on happiness, writing a book on publishing industry, writing all these things, it makes complete sense. But like while you're doing it, it feels like chaos energy. Um, and none of the other ecosystems really grow this way, but a good a good way to say to test if you are in aquatic is most people, it seems like as they learn things, it goes from like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, like their understanding of the world like slowly fills like a glass of water. But for an aquatic, it's like 0%. They don't understand like they're like just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And then like they'll slot one thing into place and be like, oh my God, like there it is. Like it's there. It's like, and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? You've been talking about this for like 2 years and you have no idea what's going on. And then like just yesterday, you saw a picture of a falcon and like suddenly it all makes sense. And I'm like, it seems like you understand it perfectly.
I resonate. My conclusion is this. I don't remember now if you asked me this just before we went live or not, or if it was right in the beginning, but how the underlying feeling is when you are doing this, because I do think that then let's assume now that you literally just kind of identified me as something that I haven't heard of, right? Um, and let's assume that that perception might by others be seen as something chaotic. Now, let's just assume that regardless of what category of creator or entrepreneur that we whether consciously identify it as or unconsciously identify as, we are still hyper aware of what everybody else might think of that, however we operate. And so the only way that I'm able to keep doing my thing is to literally just operate from the baseline that as long as it makes sense for me,
Right.
then we're good. Again, returning back to the thread around energy and balance. Like when I'm operating from depleted energy, when I try to just like push, crank things out, like to be frank, I could crank anything out at any time. It's just that I kind of reached a point where I don't anymore. And that's kind of an active choice because it has become much more important to me that I have the right energy in the things that I put out. Because when I do have the right energy behind whatever it is I'm putting out, whether it's an essay, a product, a book, an art piece, whatever it is, a piece of content on Instagram, whatever. If I have the right energy behind it, I'm going to attract the person that I want. And if I just crank out something just because the algorithm said so or the external framework expects me to do so, then I am not going to, it's going to deplete me and I'm not going to have the energetic return on that either. Plus, it's way harder. So you did ask me around the concept of shame in operating this way. And whenever I am in alignment with what I'm doing and I feel that, okay, I am grounded, I'm having the good energy in this, I can stand behind my decisions. I can stand behind my pivots. And it's much easier for me to do so with a straight back as opposed to whenever I do things because I think I should do them. It's like the whole world is crumbling and I have a very hard time to find my way out. And I end up finding myself falling back on, for example, the book of conditioning, the things that we were taught. We kind of start doing these like subconscious automatic behaviors that we kind of, like start justifying, start explaining. And that is kind of like how I'm able to catch myself realizing when I start trying to explain my pivots too much, it means there's something I need to take a step back. And so before, like just some years ago, I would kind of just keep cranking, explaining, hoping there's going to be a light appearing. But really what's happening is you're just pushing the people that actually were attracted to you as an individual and your magnetism. You're pushing those away because really when you're operating from your creative artist self, we are the generators of our entire universes. Again, it's not about like, I am incredibly open to and aware of how, different it is everywhere and all of these types of things. It's more so that I think that we need to, in order to be able to take full responsibility for and to live through this discomfort of, operating from following your gut, right? From your own intuition. Well, you need to really get honest with what that is. So, for example, what I did say, I have battled a lot the last few months. The whole entire year 2025 was hard for me. I was oscillating in and out of burnout, and I was in a dysregulated state most of the time. And so whenever and it was kind of like this internal battle between the work ethic side, where it's like, now it's time to work, you need to, X, Y, Z, and the other side of just realizing that, well, whatever I'm going to produce in this amount of time, like when I'm in a regulated state, I can do the same thing in 5 minutes that will take me 5 days. Like, and it's just kind of, I think, maturing with time, maturing with experience, I suppose, in just constantly. Like in keeping creating, because that's the base of it all. If you stop creating, regardless of the medium, you kind of, I think actually that's when you distance yourself from your inherent intuition. But as long as you keep creating, whether that's publicly or not. So during this time that I haven't been as active, I've been I've never written as much poetry as I have this past year. Maybe I think I've written 2 entire books. I might put them out. I don't know. But I again, talking about what we just said, that, that's nothing that have generated anything. I put a lot of stuff into it, but it will make sense down the road. And it's part of like processing. So I think now I feel like I'm going off a tangent, but just how to bring that back into it is really just getting honest with, oh yeah, it was really that I have obviously experienced a lot of shame in having been less active, being less present after a period of being very present. But it's really just that with time and experience, you realize that, the whole world isn't circulating around you, for one. A lot of artists and creators are very, very ego driven and kind of full of themselves in some way, where as much as that is a good thing in helping you keep kind of creating things, I think we need a part of it to be kind of ego. But I also think that it's very important to be down to earth and just recognize that, people have their own lives. And if you keep cranking out things that aren't aligned, nobody's benefiting. You don't, they don't. So it's actually a respect of everybody's side, to keep going in alignment. You'll drop some and you gain some new. And that is just kind of the beauty of it. That is how you're able to have an expansive and joyful career long term, I think. Because if you do go down the path of, we were joking before coming on live where you said, oh, in high school, everybody wanted to be an artist. And look, now it's like, I'm here and where's everybody? I do think that when we commit ourselves to go down the route, like I'm literally in the spot where like, if this shit doesn't work, I'll just do something else. Like, there's no turning back. Again, referring to sometimes you just need to make irreversible decisions. Like, not that you can't, again, you can always change. Nothing is definite. Like, if I need to take a job, I suppose I will, but it will require very much because I'll probably come up with something else. And that will work for a while until something else, basically just that when you set down on the path of living your life based on, your art, your creativity, and essentially generating things from within yourself, you need to tune in with yourself. You need to really get to know yourself and tune into that energy, because you can't sustain it long term otherwise. It's not going to be joyful. You'll just build yourself. We said this with Claire yesterday as well. You'll just end up building a golden cage of your own design, a new kind of hamster wheel, if you're not actually recognizing the fact that you can just cut that wheel off and the world isn't going to fall apart. It might feel like it. People might look at you weird, but at the end of the day, if it makes sense to you, that's all that matters, because it will open something new. Like for you, when you said you were blowing your company up, people were like, "Oh my God, how is this even allowed?" It's like, well, you're not. I think as soon as we are looking for external validation to do something, we're already lost the case. And that is what's so hard when it comes to, just I suppose maintaining business and artistry, honest artistry in the world of digital media, because we're under constant scrutiny all the time, and still we need to keep on putting ourselves out there because that's literally what our livelihood depends on. So again, I'm able to do it only when I feel that whatever I'm putting out is aligned with what I am, because then if people give me shit for it, at least I know that I was, honest. I even wrote an essay about this, I think 2 years ago, here on Substack, so it should be somewhere in my archive. Well, I think the title was something like, "You'll be judged regardless what you do, so you might as well be judged for being you." And I mean, I think this just, that's just what it is, really.
Sure. Well, that is the forced energy that I recognize from like your posts. Like, I recognize that like the chaos part is very aquatic, but like this is the like deeply resonate with the thing, be yourself, like put as much of yourself into the, like infuse yourself into the work and like make all of that like resonate and like pour forth. That is the energy that I recognize from all the rest of your work.
Thank you. I definitely, I feel as though I don't know, went into hiding for the past 4 months. So yesterday I told Claire that, she was like, "Was that okay?" I'm like, "Well, finally I'm getting some oxygen and I just need to, because I need to, again, like there is no, we can never be constant in this. It's just whether I'm an aquatic or not. Like it's just if when we set ourselves up, forcing ourselves into a format that is rigid or like box ourselves into something when my entire life I kind of just tried to break the walls of whatever boxes were put around me, and then I put a box on myself is like this isn't working. And so as I'm kind of in a transition period with a lot of like transition phase, it's just been reconnecting with the work. Get yourself in movement, get yourself in action. And that's when you reconnect with the essence of that force, whatever that is. I feel so energetic since yesterday. And thank you for having me on today to bring that out again.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I really like to go to this point, like, you have a rather large Instagram following, and you kind of didn't post on there for a while.
for
And
5 years.
I remember you were like, you wrote a post that was like, "One day, I just posted there again, and guess what? Like, it was fine.
It
People
was
were still there."
fine.
And I
Yeah.
love that. Could you talk a little bit about that process? Because I love the idea of like, you know, you can put something down and then try it again 5 years later, and guess what? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but, like, you should probably try it if it resonates with you to.
Yeah, so I think this is actually a very relevant topic for anybody who has even a little ounce of creative, energy in their veins, which I assume all the lovely people listening to this may have. Um, where we have this urge to kind of, as we are shedding skin, like going through these different phases, because we are inevitably going to constantly evolve. That is again what our work kind of depends on, right? We try things, we create things, and we keep experimenting, and it is kind of, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's just like a digital trend thing, but first, as an artist, that we kind of, when we're shedding skin, it's almost like we feel embarrassed of what came before, right? And we just want to kind of erase that from the archive of this earth, and we want to delete everything and start from scratch. I am no different. I have started up new things all the time. I mean, Folio Cut wouldn't have existed had I just, stuck to my thing. So it's not that it's a bad thing, but where I think is the cultural and kind of, modern trend of be doing these big declarations that now I delete and now I take off. And now if I delete or if I change course or if I start something new, more often than not, I kind of do it secret first and then I go out. And I very rarely delete what was back, because I do think that um, the way that the digital atmosphere, no, not atmosphere, like digital universe work, our kind of digital footprint. I mean, I have I have hardly, so I don't know if you have Pinterest as well, but I used to have about 10 million hits a month. I'm now down to quote only 1 million a month, but I haven't posted there in like 6 years.
Yeah.
And that is simply thanks to having posted maybe 5, 6 times a day for several years, and that just keeps turning. Similar thing with so Instagram doesn't work in the same way where you make a post, it kind of dies very quickly, but the work and effort that I put into it for so many years, I have almost 200K on there. It built up a social presence that gave me a book deal. Even now I receive book deal proposals. It's just that I decline them most of the time. And that I see that as a huge privilege, but and in some way, for several years, I was like, I'll just delete the Instagram. I don't want it. I don't want it. But something in my mind said, but you know what? It's something that you worked incredibly hard for. And why should you feel embarrassed for that just because the season changed? And so that is why for the past, I started on Substack, for example. I poured my heart into that and built that up. And then I was like, you know what? I let's just try Instagram again. I went back and I realized what a liberation that was. The fact that I did that kind of big cut, um, realized that again, it's just like all of the things, as much as it might look chaotic on the outside, but it all makes sense. It all connects. And then coming back and showing up again, I'm able to suddenly express in that medium again. And I've been active there now for about 6 months. Does it have the same reach as I used to? No, but I still have 200K that I can use in my benefit that I'm like, why shouldn't I, when I started Follow Your God, it was like I almost felt embarrassed about it. I didn't even I was like, oh my God, I hope nobody will ever look at that. And now I'm like, why was that? I think it's just it goes through these different cycles. So whatever you create and put out and you grow up something like you never know. Like again, you decide,
Well,
really.
I think this is great because like one of the things that I tell people is there's like two folds of this. The first is like you never know when that thing you do will come back around and it'll suddenly make sense. Again, a very aquatic thing. But two, once you like sometimes you need a bomb. Like not like something that like something that will fail. You even know that it will fail, but in order for the next thing to succeed,
Yeah,
you
you need
need
to
it.
go through that.
Right. And it's because like once it's out there, you can like I think of like Taylor Swift's album, specifically Reputation. And like it's like, yes, Reputation got a bad rap. It was a good album, but it got a bad rap. But like forever now, you can refer back and write songs like that. So like
Yes.
even though my Publishing is Broken book did not like oh God, just horrible happen. Capitalism one did, and I wrote a book about capitalism. And it's like, I didn't write those thinking they were going to be New York Times bestsellers. I wrote those so that when I release my book on being happy and a successful writer at the same time,
You could
when
reference those.
right. Or when people are like, what right do you like? Why are you talking about this bugaboo? When people talk, I was like, why are you talking about capitalism so much? I'm like, I wrote a literal book on it. Like, if anyone can reference these things, I can because like I wrote the book and I went
Yeah.
through it. So like I could come back to, and I don't talk about that subject much anymore, but like, I don't need to because it is infused in all the stuff that I'm doing. And so when you put those two things together, it makes sense where you're like, okay, I had to go through X because like 2 years later, Z happened and I needed to reference this thing. And it's like, it sounds exhausting to a lot of people. Monica always used to be like, why are you writing this thing? No one's going to read it. And I was like, because somebody has to and nobody has. And like, so I'm going to do so. And I wrote for the first 10 years of my career. I mean, now too, but my career started in nonfiction because people would ask me questions and I was building a repository. So I never had to answer that question again. And that's like 10 years later. That's still kind of how I think about what is now Happiness, what was the author stack. But like literally yesterday morning, I blew up the entire author stack, changed the domain name, and made it Happiness. And like, I shouldn't have done that. I was like, as I was doing it, I was like, I'm blowing up my life right now. This is not great. Like, all of my links are broken. If you go to my site now, like almost every link on my site is broken. And like, I'm in the middle of like a huge promotion with Claire. Like, I should not have all of the thing on my site broken, but just something inside of me was like, man, you got to do it today. I don't know why you got today, but like if you do it today, maybe by Monday when you start this the frictionless growth challenge in January, joy, it will all work. But like I've spent the last year with people on my site being like, I don't understand what this has to do with authorship because my site was called the Author Stack. And I was like, well, like it all has to do with everything. Like, cause it's all like authorship, art, like at the end of the day, we are making a product and exchanging it for money that we then use for goods and services. Or like we're making so like on a fundamental level, our product is different. It's more soul resonance selling than like pain point selling, but it's like not it's like still the same thing. And I consult for tech companies and other businesses. And when I look, like I was told for years, oh, writing businesses aren't like mine, or my business is unique. And I was like, okay, like I don't work inside a lot of like tech companies, or I don't know how their business operates. Like maybe you're right. I mean, every creative business works roughly the same, but like maybe yours. Maybe it's like maybe a real business, like you own a gym or something, like maybe it does work differently. And then I go inside these businesses and they tell me their problems, and I'm like, dude, these are the same problems that I dealt with. Like you told me 10 years ago that these were not that like there was no overlap, and like there's only overlap. And
But you're coming back to the same thing of what I kind of alluded to before, but more so with regards to the art you're doing, and where so many creatives and artists kind of have this idea that they are special and unique, because we keep say kind of, like, oh, we kind of obsessed with uniqueness, when actually we kind of need to get down to earth and just be like, there's nothing necessarily that different, and that doesn't mean that it's less valuable. My husband, he said something right early on when we met that kind of changed my look on artistry. He did the traditional route, if you will. He did like the art institute, like official art institute in Paris, and did the whole. He has a bachelor's and master's in fine line drawing, which doesn't even exist anymore. And like croquis in French. I don't know if it's the same word in English, but and he said that in art school, they kind of, so much of their training is actually reproducing other artists' work, and that uniqueness doesn't exist. When we talk about finding your voice, finding your style, what it really is, it's just a combination of all of these different inputs that you've gathered throughout your life, throughout, practicing all the different things. And your kind of, if we say unique touch, is really just the way you interpreted it and metabolized and assembled those different things. And for me, that was such a permission slip to just like, so I come from a self-taught background, and he was here doing this official. I was like, who am I to, be an artist, whatever, in Paris. And then, and this became such a big permission slip of just like, and in the visual art space, especially, it's a lot about, but I think it's the same in writing, really. It's just that I haven't reflected on it as much in writing, but originality. And really, if you take that piece out of it, we are so much more free to actually just be ourselves and original, because we don't try to force being original. You know what I mean? People, they always used to ask me like, how did you, lucky you found your style. So in embroidery, what blew up my art career was that I'm doing architectural hand embroidery. And it was that architectural kind of, I call it like touchable drawings, the kind of, because I don't have, I was just transferring my architectural sketches to thread. So I don't have a like traditional hand embroidery schooling or whatever. And like, you're so lucky you found your style and whatever. And it's just like, no, I didn't find my style. I literally just did what I enjoyed doing. And
or
again,
long
yeah, I mean, now I was lucky that blew up very quickly, but I think then I was consistent in doing that. Obviously, did every single day for probably 3 years. So it's just and yeah, you say long enough. I'm actually neglecting myself here. I did that for probably 10 years prior, just not in the embroidery medium. I was drawing architecture at home in my room, thinking nobody would ever want to see it because I didn't have social media. So, and I was kind of like this, hating on social media. I lived an entire year in rural South Africa without any social media, and people were like, "You're nuts. You need to share pictures." I'm like, "No, I'm just here living. Like, I don't want to share with you."
Right. Well,
um,
what you're talking about is building, like what we're taught in this world is to find arbitrage. So arbitrage, for those of you who are listening and don't know, is I mean, it's more complicated than this, but basically it's the differential between supply and demand. So like this gap, here is supply, here is demand. This gap between it is arbitrage. And as more things get into the market, the arbitrage shrinks. That's why when you're like for book people. You're like, oh, this niche is really hot right now. It's because like there's more demand than supply, and over time that whittles down. So like we're taught, like Amazon said, just like businesses in general, like eBay, they're all like, what is the hot thing now? Like, where is there more supply? Where is there more demand than supply? And that's all we're taught in business. And but like that is only half the battle. That's not less than half the battle, because the other half of that is what you were talking about, which is building your own arbitrage, which is building, like when you find arbitrage, it always shrinks. When you build your own arbitrage, it
It
always
grows.
grows. It
So
grows.
actually, you are pointing to something. It's like, I'm just sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, damn, this is it. We started this conversation around, how about pivoting, about whether we are, you know, how it's perceived by outside changing a lot, and how do you feel about that? The basis under all of this, the reason why I'm able to do it and keep doing it. I've done it now for a decade, is because the foundation remains the same, where this sounds maybe very cliche and maybe contradictory to the thing I just said around we're not unique, but I've literally built my own niche as just being myself. And that is why people join me whenever I change. And those who came for the niche, well, they'll find someone else. And that we just kind of have to be okay with that. And I don't necessarily, I don't see it as a contradictory to thing to the idea that, um, that we shouldn't take ourselves too high and we need to be realistic. I actually find it very complimentary in the sense that, well, because we are no different, we might as well do our thing. Again, linking back to the essay I wrote with the title, "Will Be Judged Anyway, so you might as well be judged for you." I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you want to build a joyful, sustainable, creative art career, there needs to be, again, also tying back. Wow, this is so satisfying to feel how everything we've talked about just ties together. It's about the balance of, like you literally just said. Now, if we listen to the business coaches and the business folks, they're going to be like, go find a problem and create the solution to that problem. Then you listen to the artists who are like, I just want to create my, do my art, whatever. Okay, we need to find a balance between the two. As much as we are showing up as ourselves, but how can we, and kind of creating our own niche, but still, if we don't actually present and position that in a valuable way, people are not going to find you anyway. So I think that is where it's like, I suppose, being grounded in just realizing that we need all of these different aspects. We need the useless, delusional thing that generates energy in order for us to be able to have energy to deposit into maybe the less glamorous part of business, while simultaneously having strategy and kind of ecosystem things in place for things to run smoothly. I'm talking collecting emails. Again, why could I get off Instagram for 5 years and still be in business? It's because I had an email list. Most of my not career, most of my colleagues, if you will, they didn't have that. And so, of course, you're going to get out of business. So it's about the strategy side, but integrating that, making it a natural part of the art. So I don't necessarily, at this point now in my career, I don't see sales and marketing as separate from my art. I see it as an art in itself. What you were saying in the beginning around, what is it that actually makes your business grow? What is it actually that's working? And that feels too fun. So we're like, that's not work. Like, I can't keep doing that. Well, that is kind of, for me, that's creating the thing, like actually making the art. So what I'm doing now back on Instagram, and my focus this year, is to literally do the things that feels counterintuitive, in the sense that less managing of the business, and I'm just gonna do my art, because that art, when I just share it, well, that is the content. I don't need to create content. Is nothing separate from your art. Like how I've been running Follow Your Gut, I'm writing the newsletter is an article, kind of. I'm not necessarily doing that separate. Even when I do sales emails, I always write it as a story. That is something also kind of I mean, writing has always been my secret love language, but as I am not a native English speaker, and I guess I was kind of like, maybe I won't be able to actually be a writer in English. And I don't write in Swedish, like that's not natural to me. And French, let's not even go there. Like I speak French every day, but I don't necessarily write it. So it's like English was my go-to, but I was like, I can't. again, like I guess with the art, like who am I? I cannot write in English, but I decided that, you know what, that's going to be my superpower. I can write some quirky things. And what pushed me, what encouraged me, what gave me the confidence, if you will, to actually go for it with Follow Your Gut, it was the fact that I had the same feedback on all of my sales emails, my marketing emails throughout the. So I started this 2 years. So throughout the kind of 6, 7 years prior,
Mhm.
of having more kind of actively used email marketing for my visual art business. And everybody always said the same thing, that they loved receiving my emails. And I was so shocked. I'm like, I'm literally selling you my shit. Like,
That's that's what
but
my
it's,
yeah.
but yeah, but it's because I wrote it. I was not a business in the sense of like, hey, buy this. It's like I wrote it as, so right now, as I'm writing this, I'm sitting in my sofa, I'm sipping on my coffee, and I just did this. Like I'm building it as a narrative and weaving in, still making them the main character in it. So it's not about just me kind of plastering myself all over. I always make sure that again, it's about the positioning. So I think it's all about again, I don't think that I'm necessarily, I don't want to, it's not that I'm pushing down myself, but yeah, I don't think I'm necessarily that unique in that sense. It's just that I found a way to blend the different aspects of just being myself, but I'm utilizing the tools available to me for free. Because heck, when I started out, I was a completely broke like university student, because I went to an American university in Paris, which is bloody expensive, and I had to pay for everything for myself because I'm from Sweden, where it doesn't cost anything. So my parents didn't save for me to go to university. So I got a scholarship which covered, but it was like 70%. So I had to figure out that 30%. I was working 2 jobs at the same time, like paying my rent, living in Paris, and paying for university. Like I could not have done this had I not used the free tools available to me. And that is technically available to everyone. It's just a matter of how you present it and whether you are willing to kind of put your ego aside, that just because you don't like this particular lighting or this particular, like, for example, I'll give you a concrete example in the visual arts, and I think it's very relevant in writing as well. One of the main kind of what's the word? Not obstacles, but like limitation that I heard other creators kind of oppose and say like why they couldn't. So I was in the, I still am in the hand embroidery space. Embroidery takes a lot of time, and they're like, I can't produce quick enough to post pieces. And I'm looking at their pages, and I'm like, well, you're only posting final work. So people cannot actually see you doing the process. I grew my account only sharing the process. I do the same with my writing. I share like as the kind of embodiment and experiences landing and what's coming. Like I share the process, and suddenly you're going to have an abundance of things to share. And you're never going to run out. It's when we focus on having to only share the final product that, yeah, of course, you're not going to be able to write a new book every month and share about it. You're not going to be able to, or like maybe you can for a period of time, but not sustainably across. I know that you're a very prolific writer, though, but you get the point.
I
If
do.
we
Can
don't,
I have another one more topic
yeah,
that's like, okay, so I want to take another example because like you did hand embroidery and a lot of it was of buildings in Paris. Like it
yes,
wasn't of buildings in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It was like
no,
it wasn't even
I'll show
necessarily
you.
iconic buildings, but like they were picturesque buildings. Like you look at it and you're like, well, this clearly has been photographed a billion times, and now I'm seeing it hand embroidered. So, like, you took
To
these
give
two
people
things.
an idea, this style, so this is embroidery, and this is taken, this was like visually, I brought it out in the streets, really. Uh,
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, and like you got like architectural photography. You got like embroidery, but like you had that you again, you took buildings that were beautiful and you made it like you could have, I guess, done hovels, but like to go to your point about like using the things around you and like building arbitrage and using like you used beautiful buildings when you could like in a city that is the number one most visited place in the world to like make this embroidery. And you loved doing it. So like, and I think that's like that intersection is like where like that the zones of genius and those genius ideas happen. It's like I took a million pictures in Paris. If I love hand embroidery, I would also be like maybe in a world I could be like, I see how these two things fit together. But
Yeah.
again, you took an iconic city, much of it an iconic city, and you embroidered it in a new way. And I think that is part of the genius that people are missing as well when they're trying to think about like where they should go. So as we're working to wrap up, I don't know if you agree or like, but I'd love you to just think about like talk through like how that plays into, or if it does play in. Is it like, did
Um,
you think, oh, these are beautiful? Like when you were building your thing, were you like, I'm gonna do this building because like it's really beautiful, or was it because it was beautiful that you got the idea to do the thing?
so if we're speaking about the visuals around this, I never thought about it too much because when I think too much, then I know that it's not intuitive led, it's not gut led. It's more so that I pay attention to what I'm attracted to, what I find beautiful. I take a picture of that and I do a drawing of that, and then I did the embroidery of that, and I went back and took that picture. So let's just say that I kind of kept it simple in that way. And I think, and I've operated. So if we link this back, we are on Substack, and most people are writers, um, it's exactly the same way that I launched and operated Folio got, and got traction. I got traction very quickly and grew that. And I think I see the same pattern. It's because I did not overcomplicate necessarily what I was doing. I was not strategically choosing based on what I should be doing. I literally used what was available to me, and wrote and shared about that in an intuitive way, like what came natural. The same thing, that's how the embroidery started. Like I was literally the architectural style. I started doing other types of embroidery before that, but it's actually when I was just drawing the city of Paris. Really, that was my dream since I was, yeah, like 12 or something. I wanted to go to Paris and draw the buildings. And then at like 20, I found myself in Paris and I was like, I got to draw the buildings. And my husband was like, why don't you embroider those? So I'm like, yeah, why don't I embroider those? And so that's just how it started. It was a natural evolution. My whole business grew the same way where like, when you're saying this about the arbitrage thing, it's like I started sharing them. People were like, oh, how are you doing that? Like, I want to do the same. Well, turned those into patterns. And then it's like, oh, I want to also learn what you're doing. He's like, okay, I started hosting workshops in Paris. Like that's what paid for for my apartment. The entire university was hosting workshops. Again, obviously, it was a blessing and privilege to be based in Paris because people pass through Paris all the time. But I didn't necessarily think about that at the time. I just did. I just did. The wave came and I just did. And I think that so many geniuses like are not I'm not that I'm referring to myself as one, but I think that so much genius, art and creativity is blocked within people due to them overthinking before they get started. You don't know what's going to work out before you actually try it. Like
Thing, right? And it was like at 10 years old, 80% of people are geniuses, and by like 30, like 3% are because
we are taught to overthink and overplan, and we are living in an environment that is changing by the minute. I mean, it's like, as much as what you said, like, that these things are going to work and these things are not going to work. I mean, then we're falling back to the fundamental principles around, if we just take a concrete example, like a kind of launch structure sequence with this type of, that has a very high tendency to always work more or less. But even those fundamental structures around what actually works and things like that, when it comes to actual execution, that is where we still need to be flexible and adaptive to those changes. And I think that is why, that is how everything keeps evolving. As long as we look at what do we have available right now, what feels right, what feels aligned, let's act on that. And then we will be able to, the response we get, or whether how we feel like doing it, then that is literally data that you're collecting that you can actually turn into embodied lived experience and operate from that. I mean, whenever we try to just logically think ourselves to genius, but we actually never put it out there. I mean, isn't that, I feel like anybody can be a big talker, you know, you might be a politician if you um, but very few people actually do it. And I think that is the only thing that I would say that is the main thing that distinguishes those who, if I quote, say, make it, you know, or not, is literally that you just kind of have the guts at some point to just actually do it, even if when you don't feel ready. There is, I'm doing an embroidered journal right now, and there is a quote in that I stitched into it where feel like ready to be ready is not a feeling, it's a decision. And that is something that has run true for me, at least, where it's like, and what you just said, you know, yeah, it was not maybe the best moment to do these changes, but something in you called that this had to be done in order to unblock the next thing. And ultimately, if you don't act on those and you kind of just stay passive, well, then something else is going to become the driver of your own creative life and your own business rather than yourself. And that would be really a shame.
Absolutely. Well, that is a wonderful place to end it. Where can we find you?
You can find me here on Substack. Here, you can find me on Follow Your God.
Awesome.
And elsewhere, just search for Elin Petronella or Petronella Art. You're gonna find me. I'm on Google. You can. I did a voice note on a Substack newsletter once. Like, you can Google my name, and it's something that felt really absurd, but it's actually true. You can Google my name.
I Google my name like once a month just to make sure there's nothing
Oh, really?
bad out there. So, but
Oh, I'm not. I have not done that. I don't dare to do that.
uh, that's okay. So if you liked what you saw here, we have a bunch more in the archives at January Joy at joyfulgrowthclub.substack.com. Follow your gut and make sure to follow Petronella Art and all the other things on Instagram. See what they've been doing. And we will see you next time. Bye,
Yes. Thank you
everyone.
so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.